Well, everybody is viewing this maybe from the lane of what they do for a living. I'm viewing it as a reporter and the potential headline. Remember, this comes against the backdrop of Donald Trump talking about the investigation of him in 2016 as a political hit job. At one point, he talked about President Obama ordering the wiretapping of the Trump Tower. And in one of his first hearings as Attorney General, Bill Barr talked about the FBI spying on the Trump campaign. He later said, well, spying is not a pejorative word. I view it as a perfectly legitimate word. Usually people talk about surveillance, not spying, which would seem to have a negative connotation. When you read the report, and we're obviously all skimming through it, the headline is that they didn't find the things that Bill Barr and Donald Trump alleged. They basically found that there was no political, Michael Horowitz, there was not political bias either by James Comey or by his deputy, Andrew McCabe, they found that it was proper to launch the investigation. You can argue about whether the threshold was proper, but here's the Inspector General who spent months investigating it and 450 pages explaining it, that it was proper to launch the investigation and indeed that it was proper to seek a warrant on Carter Page.
This is Fox News' Chris Wallace calling out in no uncertain terms the extent to which the IG report, which Republicans had pinned their hopes on, would show that the very basis for opening the Russia probe into the Trump campaign were partisan and unfair, was in fact warranted. In other words, yet another effort to mislead the American people into thinking that rightful oversight of the Trump administration was somehow misguided was yet again struck down. And yet, to the surprise of exactly no one, Trump's response to the findings was in no way aligned with that reality.
Okay, thank you very much. The IG report just came out, and I was just briefed on it, and it's a disgrace what's happened with respect to the things that were done to our country. It should never again happen to another president. It is incredible, far worse than I would have ever thought possible. And it's an embarrassment to our country. It's dishonest. It's everything that a lot of people thought it would be, except far worse. So I'm going to get some very detailed briefings, but they are. It's a very sad day when I see that. Very sad day when a lot of people see that. They had known nothing. It was concocted. And you say what you want. That was a probably something that's never happened in the history of our country.
He didn't even try to alter his response to support the fact that the IG report actually disproved his theories about the investigation being partisan. Instead, he just tried to straight up gaslight the American people, wheeling off a statement regardless about how it was far worse than he could have ever imagined, that it's unfair to the country. It's like if the guy lost the Oscar, but stood up and gave an acceptance speech anyway. And Chris Wallace picked up on this because he responded to Trump in real time, acknowledging the fact that Trump's response to the IG report wasn't actually based in reality.
Some of the bigger claims, some of the headlines that had been made by President Trump and Bill Barr have not been borne out, and some of the things that were being said just now in the cabinet room meeting were not borne out.
And while Chris Wallace's efforts are appreciated and justified, they're going to fall on deaf ears. And that's because, like everything else this administration does, it's not about the facts. It's not about the findings of any investigation. It's about their narrative, their message. And if the results don't fit that narrative, screw it, they'll just pretend it did and carry on anyway. Just like how Trump has been demanding everyone read the transcript of his call with Zelensky, despite the fact that it was that very transcript that shows him asking for the favor of an investigation into the Bidens with zero mention of fighting corruption. The Republican Party's proclivity for seeing something and identifying it as the complete opposite will never cease to amaze me. Even Attorney General Bill Barr outright rejected the report's findings. Again, the same report that Republicans were falling over themselves to promote back when they thought it would validate their own agenda. He said in a statement, "The Inspector General's report now makes clear that the FBI launched an intrusive investigation of a U.S. presidential campaign on the thinnest of suspicions that, in my view, were insufficient to justify the steps taken." And John Durham, a federal prosecutor whom Barr appointed to run a separate criminal probe into the origins of the Russia investigation, also rejected the findings, saying, "Last month, we advised the Inspector General that we do not agree with some of the report's conclusions as to the predication and how the FBI case was opened." And what this proves, yet again, is that the officials that Trump has appointed to defend the law are, in actuality, there to defend Trump. They've already decided that the Russia investigation was just a Democrat ploy to sabotage the president, despite the fact that the Mueller report outlined a slew of evidence of the Trump campaign cooperating with Russian officials and then committing obstruction of justice on 10 separate occasions. In other words, the report was trying to wrongfully target a guy who the same report proved committed gross misconduct. Got it. The simple fact here is that it is beyond clear that Trump committed an impeachable offense. It is beyond clear that he tried to bribe Ukraine for a personal favor. It is beyond clear that he withheld military aid. It is beyond clear that he blocked his administration officials from testifying in response to legally binding subpoenas. But what's also beyond clear is that he will reject those facts. He will reject reality outright to advance his own personal agenda, to protect his interests and save himself. The Trump administration might be willing to sell this Orwellian gaslighting to the American people, but we are in no way buying it.